Recruit Lucky. Reaper Training Room #2. Today you will be given weapons, you will be given comms, and you will assist your fellow commandos in this fight. Today we are taking a system from outlaws, bandits, and pirates. Some of you may be thinking, why are we fighting pirates if we are pirates? And to that I say, who fucking asked you, Sherrit? You are not here to think. You are here to kill! Thinking is strictly forbidden for you stupid bastards. Lucky was standing at attention with the other recruits as their drill sergeant screamed at them. When the human stopped in front of him, Lucky tried to stand even straighter if that was possible, but it didn't seem to help. The human stepped forward, his face close enough to Lucky's that he could feel the human's chin brush against his fur. All he could see was the human's mouth as he yelled in his face, "Recruit Lucky, what are you here to do?" "I'm here to do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant!" Lucky yelled out, and the human growled and reached up to grip the back of Lucky's head. "God fucking damn it, Lucky, every time I think I've got you, you prove me wrong! You magnificent shit!" Lucky grinned, but then to his surprise the human leaned back and brought his head forward, smashing his forehead into Lucky's, which caused him to stagger back for a moment. He quickly recovered, though, and stepped forward to take his place in the lineup, ignoring the fact that his drill sergeant was still so very close. "I'm sorry my head was in your way, drill sergeant," he called out once he had taken his spot again. "Perfect, Recruit Lucky. You are going on my wall of least fucking retarded recruits of all time." Then the drill sergeant finally stepped back. "Psyops picked you again." Then he drove his fist into the center of his chest, and Lucky had to hold back a surprised gasp as his drill sergeant actually saluted him. He saluted the drill sergeant back, driving his fist into his chest hard enough to hurt himself. "I will not fail." "Honor and glory!" Lucky screamed out before the drill sergeant nodded and began to move down the line. "Get out of here, then," he said, releasing Lucky from his position in the lineup as he jogged out of the room then. Even as he looked at his watch, it was already guiding him towards the PSYOPs room from before, which was good, because he still wasn't sure how to get there without help. As he walked through the halls of the ship guided by his watch, he felt honestly good about himself. It had been a bit rough the first few nights after the raid on the university. He kept seeing the dead bookbinders in his head, but he had been praised by Andromeda herself, and his sergeant had actually complimented him 2, maybe even 3 times now. Now he was being sent back to the PSYOPs, which meant they also thought he had done a good job. It was strange for him to call his superior mother, but it seemed to fit the human woman. As he came to the door leading into their room on the ship, he took a breath, and then opened it and stepped in. Much like before, the long conference table before him was empty, and he walked around it to get to the round armory beyond it. The commandos weren't as far along as last time, though. They seemed to be just starting to strap their armor on and prepare for the mission ahead. Just as he thought of that, he realized he had no idea what the mission even was. "Hello, Mother." His tail wagged briefly before he stopped himself when the older human looked over at him. She was just getting fitted into her power armor, it seemed. "Hello there, Lucky. Excited for another battle?" "You did very well last time," she said, as she looked down at the hands of her suit, slowly closing her fingers into a fist before opening them while another of the commandos was connecting some wiring in the back of the suit. "Excited. Anxious. Nervous. But yes, excited," he replied in his rather blocky English before nodding. Then he leaned back a bit as 2 commandos walked over to him. The woman he thought was the one addressed as Jefferson last time, but he was unfamiliar with the male. He was wondering why they had several clear bags filled with odd little pills. "So, were we giving him the LSD today?" the woman asked, and Lucky frowned, unsure as to what that meant. "It was a pill of some sort?" "I thought we were going to have him take a hit of acid." The man responded, which made Lucky blinked. They were going to make him hit acid? He was worried and slightly confused. But then he remembered all the strange phrase turnings that humans used, which had been his largest obstacle to speaking English more fluently. So he relaxed a bit, figuring that whatever they were doing was for his own good and he'd trust them. "Acid is LSD, dummy," the woman replied with a snort as she began to shift through the bags she was carrying. "You guys are going way too far," another woman mentioned, one of the ones who had those very sleek, strange suits that seemed to absorb light. "Just give a dose of E, that'll get him into the mood for a battle." "What? E? How would that put him in the mood for a battle? You're the only one I know who takes it before a fight. And Why is that anyway? I never asked? The one he knew as Jefferson set a hand on her hip as she looked over at the other woman. What are you kidding me? It makes everything feel fantastic. You ever been on E and fired your rifle full auto? The woman shivered a bit at the thought, though he didn't know why. Feels amazing. Ooh, is that why near the end of a battle you hold your gun down like this and just unload? The man seemed to pantomime holding a rifle low down near his crotch for some reason, but the woman nodded. Fuck yeah, it is. E adrenaline and vibrations? Sploosh, every time. It's almost as good as riding a target and strangling them timed in such a way that you both get off and then they realize you're not just doing it for fun. But it's too late because they've already lost too much air. That look of realization on their face. Priceless. The woman groaned a little at the end, sounding like she was in pleasure, and Lucky wasn't entirely sure he understood what she'd said. He thought he had, but, well, it just didn't make sense. He wasn't sure what she was talking about. God damn, Alexa, you're one sick puppy. Jefferson muttered before the one apparently named Alexa blew her a kiss and went back to checking her gear. All right, well, should we just give him a joint? Or maybe some Molly. That'll really fuck with his head. Lucky just kept looking at the bags of things that he realized were more than just pills, wondering what this was all about. None of that, Mother said, and he looked past Jefferson to see the woman in the power armor stand up. We'll have the time to get him used to those in a more controlled environment. For now, we're just going back to the oldest test there is. She started to reach for the canteen on her belt, but then stopped. Oh, right, you don't like whiskey. Lucky shook his head to confirm that. Beer? One of the others suggested, but Lucky didn't know what the word meant. All those bubbles? Not before a battle. Hard alcohol is the way to go. Vodka. That is life! Lucky frowned as one of the males at the back sounded strange at the end, and then stepped forward and handed another canteen to Mother, who in turn opened it up and held it up to Lucky's mouth. He blinked in surprise and tried to drink as she poured. But as the liquid hit his tongue, he coughed and spluttered, getting some of the spray on Mother and himself as he gasped. Damn it, Lucky! Mother growled, and he coughed a bit to clear his throat. Sorry, Mother. Not used. We drink slower, or with tube. He didn't know the word, but then the one known as Alexa reached into a pouch on her hip. Gotcha covered right here. Bendy straw. When she handed over a bright pink little tube, he blinked in confusion, and then got more surprised when Mother seemed to effortlessly bend the top of it and push the rest down into the canteen, which she handed to Lucky. Drink. He hesitantly took the canteen and looked up at her, but she nodded down at the canteen, so he took a deep breath and then held the canteen as he began to drink through the so-called bendy straw. As the harsh liquid began to burn his throat, he wanted to cough, but while the other commandos watched, he forced himself to keep drinking and not stop. Alexa, why did you have a bendy straw anyway? Mother asked as she turned to look at the other human. I've also got little umbrellas. I read the intel report. This is a mostly tropical world. I plan on making us all pina coladas, or whatever I can approximate while we're down there. A battle before beach time and a tropical drink? Girl can't ask for a better vacation. By now, Lucky's throat was burning, and his eyes were tearing up when he heard a slurping sound, and was thankful the canteen was finally empty. He gasped for air once it was done and then began coughing as the breath just inflamed his throat. The commandos laughed before someone handed him another canteen. Here, orange juice chaser, drink. Trust me. Lucky pulled the bendy straw out of the first canteen and put it in the second and took a hesitant sip. But whatever was inside seemed to help soothe his throat, and he was quickly slurping it down as quickly as he could. That's a good idea. Jefferson, do you still have that tank thing? She started motioning something about her back, and Jefferson nodded. My party pack? Fuck yeah, I do. It's not like I'm getting a new one out here. I take good care of it. Why? Fill it up with vodka and OJ. Lucky here is going to get very familiar with a screwdriver. Lucky looked up at the commandos who were now grinning wide at him. He just kept drinking whatever was in the canteen he had been given, and then took another deep breath once it was finished, before letting out a burp, which made the commandos all laugh. He felt good for some reason. Well, he felt buzzed. Very buzzed. He handed the empty canteen back, but pulled the straw out, which he tucked into a small pouch on his vest. The commandos then went back to their workbenches, except for Jefferson and the male who had handed him the burning liquid who left the armory area. He was standing there blinking a bit harder than he meant to when Mother waved him over to a workbench that looked fairly empty. Lucky if you do well today, this will be your workbench. And these are both yours. He looked at the Mauser 220 handgun and the Titan Arms M74 Confederate modular rifle, and could feel the excitement building within him. These were the weapons of a commando, not just a recruit. The M74 was well known for being highly adaptable, so every commando could tweak theirs to get it exactly how they wanted. And the Mauser 220 was supposed to be one of the most reliable handguns humans had ever made. His hands reached out and slowly brushed over the handgun first. Cold metal and composite grip with bright green night sights. Then slowly picked up the rifle, feeling the weight as he turned it over and ran his hand down the other side. I shall do well today, Mother. I will not fail you. Good, that's what I wanted to hear. She gave his back a pat then. You've got 10 minutes. Get ready. Lucky knew that his tail was wagging and he couldn't stop grinning, but he was feeling so buzzed and good that he couldn't contain himself. He loaded up 3 magazines for the Mauser, loading the weapon and chambering a round, but keeping the safety on. Then he looked over the CMR and knew he didn't have enough time to adjust it, so he just loaded up 6 magazines, but this time didn't chamber a round, and also left the safety on. With that done, he checked his gear one last time, and found the gray stick they had given him before to rub under his eyes to reduce glare. He felt ready for battle. He was still buzzed, but he was confident in himself. He would do the humans proud. He would distinguish himself and finish his journey as a recruit and graduate, evolve into a commando. His life was in his own hands now, and he knew that he'd never had a more real chance to totally prove himself and make his path his own. This was a solemn and incredible responsibility, and he knew it. He was about to thank Mother for this chance when Jefferson suddenly stepped in front of him. All right, everyone! We're here to have fun and get fyocked up! She was wearing some sort of tank strapped to her back with a hose and nozzle in her hand connected to the bottom. Was this that flame weapon he had heard about? To his surprise, she held the nozzle up above her head as she looked up and opened her mouth, pressing a button on the nozzle before a bunch of orange liquid gushed forth from the hose. After taking a big gulp, she held it up above Lucky's head, and he had to quickly look up and open wide before a torrent of liquid came gushing out, which he gulped down. Once Jefferson was satisfied, she stopped the flow and raised her hands above her head. That's how to do it, Lucky. Who else wants some? She moved on as Lucky licked his lips and noticed he was really feeling even more buzzed. Mother stepped up to him, then handing him 2 strange-looking clips. Here. We still don't have a helmet for you, but clip these onto your ears and keep this close. Once she had handed off the clips, she tucked a small box into one of his vest pouches. A little confused, he attached the clips to his ears and then heard a soft click before he could hear the other commandos talking quietly. It was his own comm unit. Volume. Channel. She pointed to 2 knobs on either side of the black box sticking out of the top of the pouch. Thanks, Mom. He smiled and then started to lean forward, arms spreading as he tried to hug the human. But with her power armor and the rifle in his hand, it was a bit awkward, and he couldn't quite figure out a way to get his arms around her. Even so, the human laughed and rubbed his head, which made his long tail lash around in joy even harder. You're just adorable. Come on then, Lucky. We're heading out. He tried to contain himself, stop wagging his tail around and remind himself he was about to be dropped into a firefight. They were walking down the halls of the ship and into the hangar they'd used before, but he saw that the other assault ships were being worked on still. Mother, what's Miss Hun? He frowned as he slurred and focused. Mission, he pronounced more clearly. Uh-oh, he's talking clearly. Top off! Jefferson seemed to appear out of nowhere with that hose again, and he had to open his mouth wide yet again as that orange liquid was poured into his mouth for him to gulp down quickly. Woo! Drink, Lucky, drink! She chanted for a few seconds before stopping the flow of liquid, leaving him gasping for air and then burping again. We're heading in ahead of the main force. We identified a lightly defended communication post we want to hit before the main invasion. Normally PsyOps doesn't head in first, but since we're a small team, we've been tasked with this instead of one of the larger groups. Lucky nodded, but he was having a bit of trouble picking up on all her words. though he was fairly sure he got it all. Soon they were climbing into the craft they had used before, and everyone was strapping themselves in. Lucky had a bit more trouble with the clips this time, but after a bit he got them all in place and gave Mom a thumbs up. "All right, normally I'd expect you to stay in touch with the rest of us on comms and all that, but today is special. So, change your box to channel 2 and turn up the volume." Mother pointed at the box in his pouch and he looked down, carefully clicking over the channel. He didn't hear anything, but that's when he remembered she told him to turn up the volume, so he turned that up as well, straining a bit to hear something. That's when the song started, and he blinked as the strange sounds began to fill his ears. It sounded different than any music he was used to, certainly. Very different. Then he jerked a bit in his seat as he felt the ship lift up off the deck and drop out from the side of the Reaper. He could see the massive bulk of the Retribution in the distance, and knew they were now dropping down towards the target planet below. Unlike last time, Mother didn't tell the pilots to turn the craft to let him see the planet, so it would be a surprise when they landed, he supposed. He jerked in his seat once more as he saw the flames appear around the outside of the craft, which had surprised him last time. He forced himself to relax a little, as he knew that he wouldn't be burned alive thanks to the shields surrounding the ships. But he really needed time to get used to this method of traveling to and from planets.